Hey folks, in this episode, it's the magnifique Valérie Jardin.
Wow.
This is Twit. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today, I have the honor of sitting down with a really good friend of mine. She's a Minnesotan Parisian who introduced me to the amazing world of Paris and street photography. You know who I'm talking about. It is the one, the only Valérie Jardin.
Bonjour.
Did I get it?
Going in French, yes. Very good.
Well, all I have after that is comment allez-vous? That's it.
C'est bien.
That's
well, that can get you out of trouble. It's good.
You know what? You know what bugs me? Before we start the interview, it was really good to chat with you, by the way. You and I haven't spoken in forever and a day. We are catching up live on the podcast, so we're going to just meander and talk about all things Valerie and street photography and everything else. So welcome. Welcome.
You're in for a treat, people.
It's
going to be catching up several years of
several years. It's crazy. It is crazy. So let's talk about this. I want before we dive in, I have a bone to pick with you and Parisians in general. All right, here it goes. Okay. You guys have infected the American lexicon with without further ado. I keep hearing that everywhere I go. Just that phrase, without further ado. It's rampant on YouTube and everywhere. People feel like they have to, before they can transition to what they really want to say, they have to say, okay, without further ado. Yeah. And Parisians don't
say it.
So that's my rant of the day. Okay, everyone who's within the sound of my voice, stop saying without further ado. Or stop saying, what's the other phrase that gets me? Can I be honest?
I can't, sorry.
It's like, so everything you said before that was dishonest. Not honest. Right. So I got to disregard that. So now we're going to say,
yeah. Can I be honest? Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Right. You're instantly suspect after that. So Valerie, what have you been up to? What have you been up to over the last years? Let me. What I see is you've been, up until the pandemic hit, you've been leading workshops like gangbusters. You've been writing books, physical and ebooks. You're online. You're podcasting. What am I missing? What else is Valerie?
Well, that's about it. Yeah. Speaking at conferences, although before the pandemic, I didn't have much time because I was on teaching pretty much in a different location every month. So it hit hard. It was, of course, unexpected. And it was such a great beginning of 2020. I had already done 4 trips to Europe by March 15. And I had such a great year planned out. And then boom, 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 everything, got canceled. And now looking into, hopefully starting this summer. So a year and a half of not doing what I love, what I live for. I mean, it is my oxygen. Yeah. It's what makes me the happiest, and it's hard. But you know what? It's going to be so sweet when I start again that it's just going to be, it's worth the wait, I guess.
Yeah, I think you and everyone else is going to appreciate just being able to go any place, right?
Gosh, yeah.
Especially traveling and feeling safe when you travel and not trying to, mummify yourself before you get on a plane. But just to travel.
I did go to Europe twice during the pandemic, but it wasn't a bad experience because only French nationals and essential workers were allowed to travel. So, there was more crew on the plane than passengers. So the travel experience was actually pretty phenomenal if you fly the right airlines. But yeah, the whole testing before you leave, testing when you get there. Yeah, it's a pain, but it was good to do it.
Yeah,
and I can't wait to go again.
From a photographer standpoint, because you're by continental, right? You have a place over there and a place here. So what's it like from a photographer standpoint? being able to move around freely in this country versus over in Europe?
Well, you mean like during the pandemic?
Yeah, during the pandemic. Yes, yeah.
Well, I was there off lockdown, so
Okay.
I left just before the lockdown the first time. Then I went during the summer, which was phenomenal. I mean, summer in France last summer was really great compared to here, where we were still the curve was still going up and up and up. Whereas there, they were doing really well in the summer. And then I went in October again before the next lockdown. I think I left a day or two before the new lockdown. So I never had any restrictions other than masking. But I was on the beach every day walking with my camera, and that was the only place where people were not wearing masks, and it felt normal. It was so happy. It was so wonderful. Yeah. So I really enjoyed it because summer was pretty tough here. I find, here in Minneapolis, people are super responsible. We're kind of stuck. We're surrounded by states where they don't even wear masks anymore. It's scary, but here, people are, since the beginning, even though, it wasn't like you were going to be fined if you're not wearing your mask, people have been really good about it. But you're right. In Europe, things were pretty tough. And I debated actually mid-March, I debated whether I should come back because my flight was canceled. If I should come back or stay there. But the confinement was really, really tough. I mean, living right on the beach, I wouldn't have been able to actually even walk on the sand for a month.
Oh my goodness.
That was off limits. Yeah. So, so that would have been pretty painful. Whereas here, spring in Minnesota, where you have so much space, and so we never had restrictions, and it's so easy. I mean, you could be a mile from the next person.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we have no issues with space on this side of the
exactly.
ocean.
So I'm glad I came back, although the flight was horrible. It was the one of the last commercial flights in transatlantic in March, and there was not a mask in sight. Everybody was coming back from Italy and so forth. Everybody coughing on the plane. We were all shoulder to shoulder. Then at the CDC for hours on end at the checkpoint. It was awful.
Wow. It's an exercise. It's an exercise in patience, right? You're just like, I'm a leaf on the wind. I'll get through this, right?
Thinking for sure in 3 days I'm going to have symptoms. There's no way I could escape this thing in this confined area. Not the flight so much, but no. And still, waiting for the vaccine now.
Yeah. So on to positive things. One thing I want to talk about first is this thing here. Your book, Street Photography Assignments, 75 Reasons to Hit the Streets and Learn. Okay, tell me about this book. Obviously, it's from you, so I know it's going to be good, and it's about street photography, so I know it's also going to be good. Why this one? This is not your first book, so why this topic?
I had already written the how-to street photography book for a different publisher, actually, and I wanted to write with Rocky Nook, and I've been, they've been supporting my show for so long, and I love what they do, and it's such a great team. So it was before the pandemic, actually, I signed the contract for this book. So it's not a how-to, but somebody who has never done street photography could use it that way by going from exercise 1 all the way down, because they're kind of in order of difficulty. But it's just that, as an educator, the one thing I hear the most consistently is, I'd like to go out, but I don't know what to do. Or, it's like okay, I'm going to write a book that is going to give you weeks and weeks and weeks of assignments, so you have no excuse not to get out. You just pick one at random, and then grab your camera and get out for an hour, 5 hours, no matter how long you have. You can actually start working on something, and then revisit. Like you do exercise number 25, you're going to do it again in 6 months and see how much better you do. So it's actually probably months or years of of photo walks that you can do on your own. And I mean, it doesn't beat one-on-one education, or of course, but you're only going to get better at this if you get out with your camera. And so at least it's one less excuse. You can just pick a theme, an exercise, a technique to practice, and then just go. So it's been popular. Actually, a lot of people got it in e-version and the print version. I think the print version, they put like little tabs in it, and then they keep it on their phone. So if they're out with their camera and they're kind of in a rut, they can pick an exercise right on the spot. And so they have it in their pocket all the time too.
Yeah. It's you hit it right on the head, right? That's one of the big things. People accumulate gear, they marinate themselves in YouTube videos and techniques, and then they sit, right? And they get frustrated and start, kind of looking at their equipment resentfully and all that. So having something tangible, and even if you go out, right? You go out, okay, I have all this great gear. What do I take pictures of? And you kind of, if you're new, you're kind of directionless and you don't know what to do. Just to have some structure around it, I think, is right on, right? Yeah,
and it's really supposed to be fun. It's not a technical. There's no technical jargon in there. It's the technical aspect is going to be explained really clearly. I put some examples from my own photographs, and then I gave an assignment, and then assignment technique, and then off you go. And so and it's, if you don't like one assignment, just move on to the next. It really is supposed to be fun.
Yeah. So I'm assuming, because you're whoever buys this book, they're going to have like multiple camera bodies, 13 lenses, a couple of strobes, 3 or 4 drones, right? So what? Yeah. Or are you still the minimalist X100F photographer?
That's it. I've been using the same camera for 8 years. Well, a new edition of it, but it's the X100V. But yeah, I'm still at 23 millimeter. I can't change the lens, and I'm really happy. So
talk about that a little bit. I have 2 of it. Talk about that, because you and I, when I came to that, thank you for inviting me to that workshop years ago, because I still talk about it to this day. You run a fantastic workshop. So when I went out there on that workshop, I brought a bunch of gear with me, right? A bunch of chemicals. I'm like, when am I going to get to Paris again? I got to make sure I bring, all these. And what if I need a telephoto? Okay, I got to bring that. What if I need wide? Oh, a fisheye under the Eiffel Tower. That'd be amazing, right? So how do you fight that? I mean, it's not even gear acquisition syndrome at that point. It's almost like FOMO for photographers, or fear of missing the shot or something. How do you combat that?
I was that person once too. Before I switched to that, my last non-X100 camera was a Canon 5D Mark II, and I had a few lenses. And how many times did I carry that 70 to 200 in a bag in my backpack and never opened it? So when I got this camera, it was so liberating, and I really do feel that those limitations I made a big jump in my photography thanks to the limitations of this camera. And it's so liberating to just have a couple batteries in your pocket, and off you go. So I don't carry, I would never even carry a tiny tripod or anything. I'll find a wall, I'll do something, but I don't even carry the lens cap.
Like, I have two. I have two of the battery. Same camera. If I didn't have to carry that battery, I would do it. Because
this one is weather sealed now, except for the front elements, because the way it's designed, the front element needs a filter. And you know how I hate having a filter in front of my lenses?
Yes.
So I have 2 of this camera, one for the rain and the snow and the spray from the ocean that has the filter on all the time, and then the everyday one that doesn't have a filter, and that's it. And I have a few of them, the old ones in the back. I can't get rid of them. I love them.
So they all have memories in them, right?
One. Yeah.
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 Yeah. How do you
One
do
even
that,
has
though?
my name on as a serial number, so I'll never get rid of that one.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Well, that's going to
Special
be
perk
worth
from
something. You
Fuji.
should
That's
auction that off if times get tough, right?
Yeah, when time gets tough. In a few months, I may need to.
Exactly. You're like, Frederick, remember that camera? Here's a link. Could you point people to? No, it's interesting. I had a photographer on recently on the podcast, a New York City-based street photographer. His name is Gerard Exupery. And we were just talking about, he's lived in New York City all his life, and he documents the city, kind of walks around. And one of the topics we talked about was street photography and defining it. Like, what is street photography? And especially in the context of, say, photojournalism. Is it micro photojournalism? Is it a kind of photojournalism? Is photojournalism picture stories only and street is one at a time? What do you think? You are the street photography diva. What is street photography?
I do think that it's, especially the way I do it. I'm such a purist. I don't retouch my pictures. I barely spend 3-5 seconds in Lightroom. I shoot JPEG. I make the decision of black and white or color in camera before I press the shutter. I would never remove anything. I barely crop, just ever so slightly if needed. So the only thing that I'm not a photojournalist in the sense that I'm not looking for crisis or sensationalism or anything like that. I just document the beauty of everyday life. But in everything else, I don't touch up my photographs at all. So in that sense, it's about as close.
So
as
you're not doing any retouching. You're not doing. Yeah. Not color balance or nothing. It's straight out of camera.
Yeah, I really tried to get it. I tried to get it right in camera. When I go into post, I'll possibly adjust put a little clarity if it's necessary, add a slight vignette, adjust the exposure if necessary, but most of the time, and I've worked on projects actually, projects that I don't do anything to the pictures at all. That's part of the challenge, to get it right in camera. I choose my settings. If I shoot black and white, it's acros with a yellow filter. I push my highlights and my shadows, and that's all done in camera. This one actually also has a clarity setting, which I haven't used. So I still use the clarity in Lightroom, but so that's it. Really, the goal for me is to get it right in camera. I feel that, we're photographers. We're not Photoshoppers, right. And I'm definitely, I know why I'm a photographer, and I'm a photographer to get things done in camera. And to me, there's so much more satisfaction. And I think there's more merit as well to get it as close as to you want. And then I'm a street photographer. I don't shoot landscape. And that's probably why, because I would have no patience to touch up this and change the sky there and do this. That would drive me crazy. And so in street photography, it's the responsibility of the photographer to move closer instead of thinking, I'm going to crop this later. Cropping should never even come into play when you make those creative decisions. You should get it the way you want it in camera, as close as possible to the limit of possibilities. And then, maybe sometime you can get close enough and you'll have to crop, but only if really you can get close enough. So it's really going out there without thinking that I actually have post-processing available to me. And that's a mindset, which I find is really, really important to the growth. Being out there and just limiting yourself to making the settings in camera. It's a great exercise, like people do with film, but without shooting film, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. I was going to say that. It sounds like what you're doing is very similar, aside from being able to control more in the camera, it's very similar to shooting slide film. right? Because
absolutely.
You got to get it right, and you got 36 on that roll, and the action's happening. So you have to have the skill and the understanding of the art of photography, both compositionally and technically, to get that shot on that one little piece of film right then. No backups, right?
But then again, I don't shoot for clients anymore. I haven't shot for clients in 10 years. So, it's for me. I'm the only person I have to please with my photography. So it's best way to be.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, why do you shoot? Like, you do workshops. Since I've known you, you've just had this ridiculously weird power source in you. I think it's nuclear or dark matter or something, but it powers you, and you do all this stuff like we talked about at the top of the show. What powers your photography? What drives you? Is it documenting the world? Is it just the art, the act of getting out into the world, and the camera's the passport? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, I love people. I love seeing. I find life so beautiful. I love to record it. I see beauty in everything. I mean, I do a series on just objects right now, and just in light, in window light, and I just, as long as I have my camera, and that's why I need to shoot every day, I'm super happy. So I shoot for me. I'm the only person I have to please, and that's the best place to be. I shot for clients for a long time. I don't miss that.
Really?
To compromise between your vision and their vision, and having to please someone other than yourself. Right now, I just have to please myself. People come and learn with me, and I use my photos to inspire people. I use them for presentations, lectures, and books. I love it.
I love it. I love it. A self-contained photographic ecosystem is what you are.
That's right.
So let me paint a hypothetical in your ecosystem, right? So you're out shooting. You're in Paris, right? You're in Paris. You're walking around like we were at that time, shooting, taking amazing pictures, and you happen upon, I don't know, the scene with a mime in it and a white and black striped shirt and Jean-Claude Van Damme standing on his one arm, and you get the shot. But in the shot, there's like a telephone pole coming out of Jean-Claude's foot or something. And it just throws the whole thing off. It would be so much better without that telephone pole in there. Would you push the limits and go into Photoshop and make it?
No,
you wouldn't.
Never.
Okay.
Never.
Why not?
I didn't know, because my job was to move myself to the left or to the right to avoid it. And I rarely make that mistake, actually, because street photography is a dance. You dance around your subject, invisible, to get the strongest possible shot in camera. And so now I would never, I once, and you know that, I think I told you, I once removed a piece of trash from a photo that was sold as, by a collector, and I didn't like. And I, to this day, I hate the fact that I removed that from the picture, from the file, because I should have just moved up a little closer, and that piece of trash on the cobblestone would not have been there.
Yeah.
So I'm really hard on myself. I'm really hard with or on myself. I don't remember. I don't know how you say that, but I'm pretty demanding.
You're a purist. You're a photographic purist.
It's weird,
You're
isn't
just
it? Because I never thought I would be.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so much choice out there, like from software to different cameras, and like I said, for drones and 360 and all this stuff, and all of it kind of would lend itself to street photography. But you're eschewing all that and saying, what is it, 23 millimeter, or go home. That's it.
It's funny because last night I was doing a presentation for a photo club in California, and during the Q&A, somebody said, well, wouldn't it make more sense to just do video and then pick a frame that is the decisive moments? And I was horrified. I said, but that would be horrible. No one would ever do that. There would be no merit in it, and it would kill the joy. And I was just like in shock.
That's awesome. I mean, Panasonics do that. They'll shoot at 8K and you scrub and you find the frame, and boom, there you go. 30 frames a second.
So and I think too, like a lot of photographers, a lot of street photographers stage their shots or direct a subject. I mean, there is a lot of quote unquote cheating. To me, it makes no sense. It is a very, very difficult genre of photography, and that's why it's so addictive. It's because it is so difficult, and you get so much satisfaction when you have a keeper, because those are, they don't happen every day. And so just to stage it, or you're missing the joy of practicing this amazing genre of photography. I could never state. And people will tell you, well, who cares? Nobody knows. It's like, but I don't care what people know. I care of what I know. And it's my own ethics that matters. And even if people don't know, as long as I know, that's all that matters. It's like, even like, as long as it's what I think that matters.
It is your, like we said, it's your own personal ecosystem.
Yeah.
So
I would feel horrible.
With that, Valerie, you have a 23 mil lens, which is relatively wide. It's on an APS-C sensor, right? So
35 equivalent.
35 equivalent, which is still wide, even on full frame. You're doing street photography, which means you got to get in a little close, right, to get certain shots. How do you manage that, especially today with, especially in the USA, with tension so high, or globally, with tension so high about everything and people worried about disease and all that? How are you going to manage that once everything kind of opens back up?
Oh, I actually already have. I'm fine. I don't have to get as close as I did a year ago for the time being. And there are many ways you could do that. Another book I wrote was called Anonymous, and how to shoot street photography without revealing the identity of your subject, which for a lot of people, they don't want have recognizable people on social media. So there's so many ways you can shoot street photography that doesn't have, it's not the face of a stranger on the picture. There's so many ways. You can do silhouettes, you can do shadows, you can do abstracts, you can use natural filters between you and the subject. There's so many fun ways to do this that actually today are many different ways you can approach it if you don't want to get close to people. So it's fine. I photograph. I'm not in your face. And a lot of people also think that street photography is in your face, and that's a misconception. Even though I get close to people, I get close in a respectful way, and people usually don't know. I'm not provoking eye contact or any of that stuff. I hate that. I get close to people, but in a very subtle way, and they don't notice me. My camera is silent. I don't bring it to my eye. I've fine-tuned the art of being invisible when I'm really close.
Stealth.
Very stealth. And then, but I also love shooting people a little bit further away and silhouettes. And I'm not a crowd photographer anyway. So if I'm in a crowd, I'll I'll get really close to isolate a subject. I don't like busy. So
yeah, in the US, we have this thing called expectation of privacy, right? Which means in public, if someone's in a public place, there's no expectation of privacy, meaning you can take their picture and you don't have to worry about releases or anything like that. Do you care about that? Like, if you're shooting somebody, like, how does that work from a professional street photographer perspective?
I use the same method and approach anywhere in the world, whether I'm in Paris or in New York. Even in countries where there are those quote unquote privacy laws, which are very, very gray, the subject would actually have to prove that you did major damage to their reputation. I don't photograph people in vulnerable situations, in moments of crisis or in moments of ridicule. And people often see my photographs. Recently, someone saw a photo of their father in a book, in a fine art book, and of their father at the Luxembourg Garden, and reached out to me. They just loved the photograph, and I was so happy to send them a copy of the photo for the father, because he said, I've never seen photo of my father like this. And it was a candid photograph of the gentleman. And they were thrilled because it was a beautiful photograph. It wasn't making fun and I would never do that. It's really, if I always put myself in the shoes of my subject, and I photographed plenty of people in ridiculous situations, but I would never share them, never post them, because if it was me, I would hate it. And it's always putting yourself in the shoes of the subject. So,
yeah. What's the weirdest situation you've been in over the past couple of years? Street photography, like being chased by dogs or
No, actually, it's funny. In all those years, 10 years of pretty much doing only that.
10 years. I can't believe it's been that long.
I've never had any problems. Never.
None at all.
It's always been really good. Like people, even if people say, "Oh, did you just take my picture?" Because the goal is to not disrupt what's happening. So I don't care if people notice me after I get the shot. I just don't want them to notice me until then. And so often people, notice, like, just as you're walking away, said, "Did you just take my picture?" And I'm so happy to tell them, "Yes, you look fabulous. I mean, the light was like this, and look," and I'm sharing, and just I think they feel from my excitement about the moment that I captured, that they feel at ease, and also I feel really confident in what I do. I know that what I do is important, and so I'm not creepy or anything, because if you're really nervous, then you're gonna send the wrong vibes.
Yeah,
but I really believe that it's very important. Imagine if street photography wasn't done respectfully and done well, what would we have of the past 10, 20 years? Just selfie pictures of people, and that's it. So just to get those, there's so much value in photographing everyday life in this time in history. If we look at photos from the 1950s, we learn so much. So it's really our responsibility as documentary photographer. I don't like the term street because I shoot on the beach, I shoot on the ice, I shoot on the lake. So it's photographing life at a moment in time, and it's so important. But it's important to do it right, because it's become such a popular genre and so many people are disrespectful. It's actually hurting everyone else.
Yeah, you got to talk about that, because you just said something that you don't call it street photography because it can exist, outside of just streets. I've been shooting since 1989, and all this time, till just this moment, I've thought of street photography as almost urban photography, like shooting in big cities like Paris or New York or Los Angeles or whatever, and kind of getting the grunge and the everyday life kind of unfolding, a day in the life of kind of thing. You're saying that ain't necessarily so. Explain that.
Well, as long as there is the story, as long as there is a human element in everyday life situation. I mean, right now, I honestly haven't been in a city. Well, no, that's not true. I did some street photography, unfortunately, in Minneapolis at the George Floyd memorial shortly after the murder. So I was there, and I did some documentary photography. But that's about the only time I've been in a city since Lisbon back in March. So it's been almost a year of doing street photography outside of the streets. And so this summer, whether I was in Minnesota or back in France, I was on the beach, and I didn't want to document the pandemic. I don't think I'll forget it. I don't need pictures to remind me. And so early on, I decided, no, I'm just going to protect myself from it. So whenever I'm out with my camera, I'm going to try to look for normalcy versus, photographing the pandemic. So I was on the beach, around the lakes here, where people were just, kids were having fun, and there were smiles, and it was just like normal. And then when I was back in France, the couple of times, I spent my entire time on the beach. I never even walked into a store, just walked on the beach back and forth, and morning till night. I would take breaks in between, but I would just walk for miles and miles and just photograph people in moments of peace. And because it's been stressful for everyone, no matter where you are in the world. So I really wanted to photograph that normalcy. And now this winter, well, our lakes are frozen. And since
Yeah.
Christmas, I started documenting life on frozen lakes. And I've been in Minnesota for many years, and I don't think I've ever enjoyed a winter as much as I have this year, because when I started the project called On Ice, I thought about the most common things that people do on ice: skating, snowmobiling, ice fishing, that kind of things. But since then, I have photographed a dance party with a DJ on a frozen lake. I have photographed ice swimmers. I have photographed people playing homemade game of curling on ice, ice sailing, kites, skiing, all that stuff that we do on ice. And it's just been so much fun. So much fun. People having bonfires in the middle of a lake with, and their sled dogs, and pulling the kids on the snow across the lake. And so much fun. I met so many wonderful people. And so it's been my ongoing project for the winter month. And I have about another month of it, probably until mid-March to end of March. And then the lakes will start thawing. So.
Now, is this a self-assigned project, or is this
everything I do is self-assigned?
That's right. No more clients. All right. What do I think? Well, talk about projects though, Valerie. I'm curious because, we've got the book again. Let me hold that up. So we've got the book, Street Photography Assignments, and who was the last person I talked? Julianne Cost over at Adobe. I was talking to her on the topic of self-assignments and kind of keeping your creative juices flowing by putting them in a box and, saying, I'm going to go take pictures of doorknobs or something like that. Where do you fall on that? Should they be one-off missions, or should they be, part of a series that your assignment?
Well, I always have short-term and long-term series. So I have some ongoing series that end up being books. Like I had my street dogs that became a book. I have a series on hands and people, close-ups of hands, people doing different things from around the world. So that's an ongoing series that will be a book eventually. So I have some long-term series, and then I always have short-term, like the On Ice project will be a one winter thing. And I'm not going to continue next winter. I already decided, because I don't want to repeat it. I mean, what are the odds of me finding people doing different things on ice next year? It's going to be the same thing, basically. So the goal of this project is, every time I go on a lake, is to find something new and different. So it's challenging enough for a winter. So I'm not going to do it next year. I'll do something else. So short project. I also worked during the pandemic. Last summer, I worked on a project called Shop Local, where I met with local businesses and photographed them at work, and shared the photos on social media, trying to get them some business, and then I gave them the pictures. So that was a 2-month-long project. So I think it's important to do both. I mean, and these are just for me, but actually, surprisingly enough, when you put your heart into it, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, the On Ice project has already had quite a bit of visibility, and it's probably going to be an exhibit next winter. So, and possibly a book. So you never know who is watching. And that's why it's important to, to be organized, show your best work. And then I post the photos, some of the photos on Instagram, but I have from day one working on that project, I started putting them in the portfolio on my website. So it's already, it's already done, because if you wait too long, you're just never going to do it. So you have to stay organized. Yeah.
So folks that are listening and watching this, you see what I mean about Valerie's nuclear power plants? She is powered by something that's alien, because I have no idea where all that energy comes from. It's crazy. So it's good though.
But it's been a lifesaver, honestly. If I did not, I think we're so lucky to have photography throughout this time. I don't know what I don't know where my mental would have gone without it. I mean, it's just been amazing. And photographing close to home. I had not done that so much because I'm on a plane every month, usually to a fun destination, a new city, Berlin one month, Rome another month. And so to just have to make do with just your surrounding, it's quite an experience. It's great.
That is so cool. I love it. We haven't talked in forever, but you are just as enthusiastic now as you were last time I spoke with you. And you're probably even more of a minimalist now than
yeah, probably. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Which brings me to this other thing. You have a podcast, right? Which is not minimalist and it's not simple, right? It takes technology and computers and servers and all that. Tell us about your podcast.
It's all your fault, actually. You get me started. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so my first podcast was on the TWIP network many years ago, Street Focus, and then I don't know, has it been 4 years since I started Hit the Streets, and I had never missed a release. I went from Thursday to Thursday, so it's been like 8 years of never missing a release. But I switched to every other week about a year ago because 2 years ago my schedule was just so busy. So, but still releasing a new episode every other Thursday, and I'm at episode 182 or 184 of the new podcast. Yeah,
brilliant. And what do you talk about?
Podcast.
What do you talk about?
Anything from inspiration. I bring guests who are working on some cool projects, and it's not about gear. It's really about travel and inspiration and street and a bunch of things.
Great. That is great. Yeah. Congratulations on that. I have a question. You brought something up earlier. We were sort of talking about the definition of street photography, and you said something with a little bit of disdain in your voice about staged street photography. Like, tell me about that. And it may sound like high level, like, okay, of course you wouldn't want to stage it, but a lot of photographers will do that. Like, especially. Which I don't believe in it, but if you're at, say, you're photographing the protest or the insurrection in Washington or whatever, right? And there's the perfect shot of the crowd rushing the building, and you've got this person that would look great if they were just holding a flag in just the right position in front. Why not do that to tell the story better?
And you're right. No one would know, and I don't know if. See, are you even supposed to do that as a photojournalist?
Not as a photojournalist, no.
Okay,
no.
So and that would be a photojournalistic type of assignment at that point. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely not do it either. No, I mean, but even asking someone, I missed that. Could you kiss again? Or could you do this? Or could you move? No. To me, it defeats the purpose. I'm not directing it. It's something else, and it's just not candid street photography. It's not candid anymore, and it removes the difficulty. It's going to produce beautiful photographs, sometime maybe too perfect, because obviously you remove the difficulty element from the craft. But it's not life in its rawness. It's not.
It's an illustration at that point, right?
Exactly, and it's not candid street photography. So you can't just call it candid photography. You just have to be honest and say, I asked them to sit here, because obviously you didn't catch it. And I see a lot of shots that I don't catch, but it's okay because I see them. That's more than most people. Most people just walk by and never see anything. You're not gonna capture every beautiful moment that you see, but at least you notice it. And to me, that's part of that makes me happy. Even if I don't photograph it, at least I saw it, and that's more than most people. And so getting that moment, the perfect gesture, the mood, the light, whatever it is, that's amazing when it happens. But if it was easy, if if it was made easier by staging it, then it wouldn't be half as satisfying. So I would see no point in it. No point.
I love it. I love it. And you're absolutely not passionate about that at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. Whatever. Valerie, as we wrap this up, tips. I know people are listening to this. They're going to go get your book. They're going to go check out your podcast and see what you're up to at your site. What's the website again before we leave?
ValérieJardin.com. It's just the name.
And for people that don't speak French. ValérieJardin. There you go.
Even if you Google that, you'll probably find me on the top several pages.
That's Valérie Jardin.
That's right. Frederic.
Yeah, there you go. See, I love it when you say my name. If street photographers that are listening to this, they're like, oh, this is great. I want to dive into this. Give us a couple of tips for the photographers that want to just, be better at what they do.
Well, first, there's so many different ways to approach it. Find an approach that fits you. If you're more an introvert, well, don't get too close to people right away. Just photograph more minimalist way. Do some silhouettes or work with shadows, and slowly you'll get closer and closer. But don't push yourself and then you're just going to be sweating bullets because you're so nervous and you're going to have a horrible experience. So, there's so many different ways to approach it. Find a way that fits your personality to start to just get your feet wet. Maybe you'll feel more comfortable approaching a stranger and doing a street portrait. That's fine too. A lot of people who are shy actually find that once they approach a stranger and have a conversation and say, "Oh, I'd love to do a portrait of you." Yes, it's at that point it's not candid, but it's still a stranger, and you're not posing them. You're just making a street portrait of them. And some people feel more comfortable doing that because then they have the okay from the person and they don't feel so sneaky. So there's so many ways to approach it. But the streets is not just about people, or you can do a fun series on just dogs and their owners. You don't even have to see the people, could be just dogs and legs next to them. There's so many ways to do this if you're a little nervous. And it's really about respect, really. There are many ways you can shoot street photography without revealing the identity or the face of your subject, which often is the best way to do it when you're photographing children, for example. So it's all about respect.
I love it. And then what's an ideal final destination for these images? Should all roads just lead to Instagram or
yeah,
someplace else?
I think Instagram is pretty much all that's left right now. That's the only place where I post now. But and then blog, I think people realize, especially for projects, if you only post on Instagram, it kind of disappears. So unless you have a website where you can have a gallery of a project or a gallery of street scenes or whatever, at least do a blog so that they have a home. Because Instagram, anything that's on social media, it kind of disappears after a while. So.
I love it.
It doesn't disappear ever, but no one sees them after a while.
Right. I call it the never-ending roll of toilet paper.
That's about it.
It just goes off into the horizon. It's over. So, yep. I love it. Valerie, thank you for coming on, and congratulations on everything you do. Your spirit is so bright, and it's such a breath of fresh air talking to you. I always get excited about photography again when we talk. So
good. Well,
fantastic.
We'll have to see each other again soon, Frederic. It was nice to catch up.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I may sign up for another workshop in Paris. I need to get back there. So
that's right.
We'll have to do that. All right, Valerie, ValérieJardin.com. That's right. And all roads lead there. All right, Valerie, thank you so much. You have a good week.
Thank you.
This is Twip.